What's up everyone and welcome to this course. This tutorial is going to teach you how to create 360-degree renders, and then we're going to use a plugin called Layama where it's going to stitch it all together and produce this, a 360-degree render walkthrough where you can obviously navigate wherever you've placed cameras, so it gives you full control on where you want to navigate to. If you are new to Layama, it's an awesome piece of software. The link is below. Have a look at it. It's a very affordable once-off fee for a year, and from there you can do so much with it. In this tutorial, I'm going to guide you through everything. I'm going to teach you how to create hotspots, to change the icon of the hotspot. You can see right there, that is a hotspot. I've linked it to a YouTube video. I'm also going to teach you how to create alternate scenes. So if you're in the interior design industry and you've created a beautiful walkthrough for your clients, we have the opportunity right over there with this button that I created. If I click on it, it is going to load an alternative scene, meaning you can change materials and finishes. As you can see, I've changed the kitchen, and right over there I've changed some marble, and then you can add as many as you want. I've got one more option that I've included here. If I click this one, it is going to load a nighttime scene. So really awesome piece of software. There aren't that many tutorials out there that teach the advanced features, which I'm going to cover with you. So we're talking hotspots, we are going to talk about alternate scenes, then I'd like to teach you how to actually add additional cameras to your walkthrough. So for those who are familiar with Layama, and let's say you've got 10 cameras in the scene and you want to add an extra 2, 3, 4, 5, instead of re-rendering the entire animation over again, I'm going to teach you how to create a separate file with those Layama renders, and we're going to add that to the original one. And then I'm going to teach you as well how to re-render specific camera views so that you don't have to re-render the entire scene. For example, if your client loves everything about your walkthrough and it took you the whole weekend to render it out, but they are not happy with one element, for example this set of furniture or that set of furniture, I'm going to teach you how to replace those cameras and only those cameras, so you don't have to re-render everything. So we're going to dive into Layama. We're going to cover everything that there is to do with the piece of software, and in this particular tutorial we are going to use 3D Max. So let's start. Okay, now that we're inside Max, the first thing we need to do is obviously install Layama. Once that is done, we are ready to actually start the creation of the cameras. I'm going to go through all the settings and explain a couple of things that we can do with this. Just remember, if you're going down the route of creating 360-degree renders, it means that everything has to actually be designed, textured, and ready to view. What I mean by that is, in this example, you can see that everything is textured, everything looks good. There is no data or information over here. So remember, if you're having a big window, make sure you've got things on the outside. Same concept as this room over here. Technically, I should have ended the actual virtual walkthrough here, not allowing to take this next step. But I wanted to show you that by doing that, there's a whole bunch of empty space here. And that doesn't look good in a walkthrough. So you obviously want to be able to design everything. So remember, the 360-degree renders that you're creating in the walkthrough, it's a ton of extra work that is involved. But of course, the finished product is really amazing. Okay, so let's actually begin. The first thing that we need to do, and what I like to do personally, is I'll create a new layer. I'll call this Layama cameras. Now I do this to separate the cameras from the still renders that I've created for the project versus the ones that are only for Layama. So what I do is, with that activated, let's go underneath command, let's create a Corona camera. I generally create this in the top view, so just click and drag, very, very simple. Deactivating the target really does help. You don't need a target because we are creating a 360-degree and it makes it less cluttered. So deactivate the target, I'm happy with that. Click and drag. Now, where you place the cameras is where you're going to walk or travel to. So this is where we have full control and full freedom to tell our clients where they can and cannot walk. So where you place your first camera is not a problem. It doesn't mean the first camera that you place is going to be the starting camera. We can actually choose that. So for now, all I suggest is just place the cameras wherever you want to actually travel to and go to. Quick word of warning, the renders take long. You must remember, you are rendering out a very big render here. So we are rendering in a cube format, so when we dive into the render settings and the size of the renders, you'll see that each render is going to take a really long time, and obviously the more cameras that you have, the longer it's going to take to render. Okay, so I'm going to place my first camera over here. That looks like a good spot. I'm going to press C for camera just to dive into it, and I'm going to pick a decent or good looking height. Once that is done, I'm happy. T for top, and all we're going to do now is populate our cameras. So holding shift, click and drag, I'm going to say instance, that's fine. And this is where we have some freedom already. So we can choose, do we want to end the camera over here? Do we want to end it over there, not allowing this view over here? We can also choose, do we want to travel further than this? Do we want to travel outside? So remember, the more cameras you put in, obviously it's going to render a lot longer, but it's also going to give a lot more work for yourself, making sure that you've designed everything. So in this instance, I'm going to delete these two cameras because this view over here, if I just had to rotate it like this, press C for camera, it's a good enough view for me. I'm happy with that. T for top. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to populate more and more cameras, and remember, it doesn't matter which camera you start with and create the next camera. So for example, this was my first one, this was my second one. I could still select this one and make the next camera point. It really doesn't matter. Layama is going to understand which camera is which. It's going to stitch it all together for you, so don't stress about that. I'm going to click instance over there. I'm thinking this is a good spot right over there. Let's click instance, grab this one. So let's go into perspective mode, just have a look. What I'm going to do is let's place one all the way down there. I'm going to avoid this passageway for now. T for top, let's place another one over here. So one of the questions that I get often is, can it go over furniture? And the answer is yes. So for example, if I were at this camera point, let's say we're facing there, we can travel all the way there. You cannot obviously travel through walls or anything like that, as long as the cameras can see each other. So that's one really important aspect about this. You cannot have this camera all the way down here, for example, and expect to jump from here all the way to that camera. That is not going to happen. So the cameras have to see one another. If they can see one another, you can travel to that point. For example, this camera can see all of these, so I'll definitely be able to travel at any of these points. It can even see this one. So with a correct click, I could travel all the way to that spot right over there. So from this point, let's have a look. I've got a little bit of a doorway over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place it about over there in the middle, and then I'm going to place another one quite close and instance that. So I do generally keep a very good distance between two doors, because obviously there's a passageway through it, and you want to make sure that the cameras can fit through nicely. Another camera can come right over here. Let's instance that one. And then we've got the choice, obviously, of going upstairs. Now, doing a stairs can be tricky at first. I'm going to show you the way that I do this. I'm going to select the stairs, and I'm going to isolate it with Alt and Q, and let's go into the front view. So here's my camera. Actually, let's go in the left view. So there's my camera over there. I know that my floor is over here. What I generally like to do is I'll create a box. So just a very simple way of doing this. I'm going to grab a box, and I'm going to have a look at the height is, let's call it 118 centimeters. What I'll do is I'll actually grab this box and just place it on the landing where the next camera is going to be, because I want to keep it at the same height. So just like that. I'm going to grab this camera back to left view, and I'm just going to make a copy or an instance, it's fine, right over there. Now I know that the cameras are actually at the same height to a floor level. Same concept that I'm going to do over here. So I'm going to shift click, I'm just going to make a copy or an instance. We're going to delete these boxes anyway, drag it down, select this camera, let's instance or copy this camera right over here, drag that guy right over there, front view, just to see how high we need to place it. And again, you don't need to be 100% accurate, but of course don't go crazy and make it double the height, because then when you are viewing everything, it's just going to look really, really odd. And the last camera can come here. And of course, we can just delete these boxes. So I just use those boxes. It's a very simple way of doing it, just to get the right height for all these cameras. Now I know that all these cameras are at the same height. T for top, let's unhide all, and let's just hide this roof to see what we've actually created. Okay, so these are our cameras that we have over here. So you can see wherever we want to start, every camera can flow with one another. Whether you start upstairs, you can obviously travel all the way down, and down, down, and across, and so on and so forth. Now that that is done, we need to understand a couple of things. Number one is it's really good to actually do a very low-res draft walkthrough for yourself. The reason being is just in case the lighting is bad in some parts, maybe the animation walkthrough doesn't work for any odd reason, and you need to be able to troubleshoot this. So on my PC at the moment in a high res, it took about 9.5 hours to render this out in a good quality. The draft renders took probably about half an hour, and that's worth the wait. And render it out, get a draft, have a look. If you're happy, then go into the next phase. So I'm going to show you how I set up a draft render. It's very, very simple, and then obviously we're going to dive through how to actually do the final render. Once you are happy, let's make sure that we obviously unhide the ceiling. You don't want to render it with the ceiling gone. What I'm going to do now is I am going to go into Layama and Layama exporter, and then we have this menu over here. Let me put that there. So let's have a look what we have. It's obviously telling us the version that we're using, the renderable cameras. That's obviously empty because we have to choose the cameras. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my layers, and this is why I like creating the layer like this, selecting all these layers, add from selection, click done. You can delete cameras at this point by clicking the delete button, or you can add more cameras as it goes on. Cube size. So if I click the down arrow here, we got 512 draft, 1024, 2048, and 4096. Honestly, 2048 is great. That is really, really good quality. It is extremely high intensive in terms of rendering. I did the medium quality. Let me show you one more time. This is the medium quality that I did, and this one took about 9.5 hours. So I feel this one is good enough to actually present to clients as well. What we can choose for the very first set of renders is obviously draft quality. This will just speed up the process. You can have a look if you like where you've placed the cameras. If there's any issues, problems, then you can fix them before obviously going into the medium or high quality, whichever one you prefer. So let's put on draft quality for now. The default camera is your starting camera. So which camera would you like to start off with? So again, it didn't matter which one I placed first because I can actually choose the default camera. So let's have a look. Top view, let's have a look let's actually make this one. So this one is, let's see what camera this guy is. Number 19. So I'm going to choose here, number 19, that is my starting camera. Okay, this one over here, delete animation, this is really, really important because if you have any animated objects in your scene, you're going to have to delete those keys. It's really important to understand that because theoretically, Layama is creating an animation for you by taking all of the cameras, rendering them out, and then it's going to stitch them together. If you have any animated objects in your scene, Layama is going to delete those keys for you. So just be very wary of that. If you have animated objects in your scene, Layama is going to delete them. So make sure that you obviously make a separate file to save that in. If you select all, what is going to happen is Layama is going to go through the entire scene object by object by object and delete the animated keys. This can take sometimes a full hour for Layama to do that for you, depending on the complexity of the scene. If you have nothing in your scene that is animated and you have no animated keyframes, select none. So what this is technically doing is giving Layama permission. We are telling Layama, listen, I've got keys in, check my scene, delete everything for me, I'm happy. But it does take a while. Like I said, it sometimes takes a full hour to go through everything. If I choose none, I'm telling Layama, I've done it already, don't stress, there's no animation keys, and therefore we save ourselves a lot of time for the program obviously to do everything for us. If we choose transform only, this is only going to delete the transform keys of the animation. So if I hover my mouse over here, you'll actually be able to see a little drop down box. Let's get that quickly going. And it says here, transform only deletes position, rotation, and scale keys. You can use it if you have no modify animations, faster than all keys method. So, and then again, none preserve animation. I choose none because I've already deleted all the animated keys, so I'm happy with that. Steps, render mode. We got full render, do nothing, write Layama file, and then prepare scene for render. So let's start at the bottom. Prepare scene for render. Again, hover your mouse over here and it'll actually give you a little bit of an explanation what it is. And if we check it out there, so we keep our mouse over here, it says prepares the scene for being rendered later locally with Backburner or using a render farm. So if you're going to do a render farm or render it on another PC, you can prepare the scene for rendering and then you can actually make that render. Do nothing, write LYM file. So the LYM file is the Layama file that you get once the animation is created. You can do this if you're going to merge in more than one Layama file together. And I'm going to teach you how to merge them in with one another, so don't stress. look at that timestamp if you want to jump straight to that part, and then obviously I'll explain to you what that does. So generally speaking, you want to go full render. Full render means we want it to render. We want it to go right ahead, render everything for us, animate it, do what it needs to be done. So full render. Write Layama file. If we untick this, obviously it will not write the Layama file. Delete hotspots is unticked because we do not have hotspots here. And again, check the timestamp if you want to learn how to do hotspots. I'll cover that as well. And then run Layama app. What that means is as soon as the animation is finished, it is automatically going to run the LYM file that it created, which of course is the Layama app, and then from there we can actually dive into more settings and finish off creating everything for the animation. Finally, we have the go button. So let's quickly jump into render settings here, and I just need to explain a few things. Number one is the width and height here does not matter. You can make this as big as you want, it really doesn't matter because we are controlling it directly over here. Next thing is rather use a very high noise level limit for your draft, so even something crazy like a 40%, because again, all you want to look here is not the quality of the renders. What you're looking for is making sure that the cameras see each other, that they work, there's no gaps, they smooth, and of course you're happy where the cameras have been placed in your scene. So I would put a 40%, 50%, it really doesn't matter. The faster the better. Then you're going to choose right here draft quality. Okay, so those two go hand in hand. And then what you're going to have to do, the last step, is make sure you save the file. So I'm going to click on files here, and I've already created a folder, and I'm going to teach you how I like to structure my folders because it can get a bit confusing, especially when you're intending on creating alternate scenes and all of those advanced features, and you're going to get very confused with how many different actual renders you have. So for now, let me just show you what I've done. All I've got is a draft renders folder. If I double click that, I'm going to call this draft_01. That's fine. Click the save button. So before you start, remember, check, place all your cameras, great. Number two is select the starting camera, go through these settings, make sure you're happy with everything here. Then if it's a draft, make sure that your noise level is very high, just to speed up the process. Of course, you can do time limit or a pass limit. I just prefer noise level limit. Underneath common, make sure you click on save, and you have to save that actual file. The very next step that we do is we render this. Do not click this render button over here. You're going to have to click this button, which obviously says go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on go now, and we're going to actually create this. So 1, 2, 3, click. It's going to calculate everything. You can see at the bottom left hand corner it is saving. What it's going to do is going to save the scene. It's going to calculate everything for you, and then eventually it's going to start the actual rendering process. So I'm going to fast forward this part for you to have a look at, and then once it's done, we'll dive through what we actually see. Okay, as you can see, it took 24 minutes, call it 25 minutes, just to push this small draft out, which is awesome. That's fast enough for you to actually get a draft render going. When you are done with that, this big menu appears now. So you'll see this menu quite often. We'll go through this. The web title, now this is obviously the title shown in the web browser. So for example, if we have a look at the one I've got, I labeled it VizCourse. So you can obviously label it anything that you want for the client to see, whether it's your name, the client's name, whatever the case is. So again, you can type that in. Web description, and again, if you leave your cursor over this, it'll kind of give you a small description of what this means. So URL description seen in the web links when they are sent by WhatsApp and so on and so forth. So if you are sending a link to somebody, the link will actually have a small description, and that description can be put in here. Loading logo. So again, if we go back to my example, if I just refresh this, you'll see that my logo appears straight away there, loading it up. That's what this does, loading logo. You don't have to have one. You can definitely choose to have one or not to have one. If you leave it blank like this, it is going to be the standard Layama logo, and a bit later when I show you again how to upload it to an FTP site, check the timestamp if you want to know that now. I'll show you how to actually replace the logo in the event that you forgot to do it here. So a lot of these things can still be edited if you forget to do it. And remember, you can always load up this file again and just export it again. So what's happened now is that we created all the renders. We've got all of our renders in a folder. What's going to happen is as soon as we click export, Layama's magic actually kicks in now, takes all those renders and actually stitches them all together for you. So if we quickly had to go into the folder over here, let's scroll up. So these are all the actual files that actually got rendered out. So you can see that it has created all of the Lightmix layers. So just remember that you're going to have a lot of files here. If you're using Lightmix, it's going to save all of the Lightmix files for you. We got EXR files, we got everything else. So there's a whole bunch of renders here that we are looking at, but ideally these are the ones that will be the important ones. So what's going to happen with these guys over here is that Layama will take these renders, and as you can see they are cubes, and it's going to take all these renders and they're going to stitch them together. I do want to give you a little bit of a tip here. There are times where, for example, if we have a look at my light mix, if you've done a lot of work in the light mix layer itself, you'll see that this is the light mix render over here, and if we look at this one over here, this is the non-light mix version. Now they look identical. I have had in certain situations where the light mix version is the correct version, and this version over here is actually the version of the render without all the light mix parameters adjusted. If that is the case, what you need to do is the following. The draft underscore 010000, that's what we save the files at. If these are the incorrect files, and these are the correct files, the ones that actually have interactive light mix, all you need to do is relabel the correct ones. So draft underscore 01 interactive, you relabel these renders over here to match these names. So just be very careful, it has to be 100% accurate. So what I would do is I'd grab all of these guys, I'd make a copy of this in another folder, and then I would delete them. Then I would take these renders over here and relabel them to match these names. So I'm hoping that's making sense. It's a very simple process to do. Just be very careful. You've got to make sure that you put obviously in the correct amount of zeros, ones, and whatever the naming convention that you've used. So here is the Layama file as well, and what that does is if we had to close this, all we really have to do is just double click this file over here. This file opens up this. So in the event that you've made a mistake, you can simply just come back in here, double click this, and then this is what you get. So the loading logo, again, all you do is click these three little buttons and choose the logo that you want. So what I've done is I've got all the actual logos and icons that I want to use in this Layama project. So there's my loading logo. I'll click the open button, and there it is right there. Next, we have on-screen logo. This is a watermark over the viewport. If you click over here, it'll show you where you want to place it and the watermark over the actual viewport. So if you don't want to have that, you can simply click no. If you do want to have one, you can click here. I've already prepared one, so I'll show you where that goes. It is this one over here, the watermark. Click the open button. Manual scene definition, hotspots, and alternative scene sets. I do cover these. Check the timestamps if you want. This is for advanced settings, and if you're looking specifically on what these do, then again jump to the timestamp. For now, I'm going to skip this just so we can get a basic understanding of everything. And now this section over here allows us to do the output. So default camera, which is your starting camera. So again, you can change the default camera here or the starting camera in case you made a mistake. Underneath is the detail evaluation. Now if you leave your cursor over this, it'll tell you the higher the better navigation quality and point selection precision, but it'll take more time and much more RAM. So I go into Ultra. I've got a lot of RAM to spare and I don't mind waiting, so I'm going to choose Ultra. So what this is telling you is the transition between camera to camera. So if we go back to our example and have a look here, the changing from this camera, let's say, to this camera, it is a smoother transition, it is a cleaner transition, and you can see that it's really good and smooth. This was done on Ultra, so again, it's completely up to you depending on how much RAM you actually have in your system. Next is the intercache. Now, very important, we've got three options. You've got balanced, which is pretty fast, low RAM; fast, which is the fastest method, high RAM usage; and adaptive, the slowest, mid to high RAM usage. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with the quality of the exported product. If you keep a cursor over, it says the cache used before exporting it. It has no impact on the exported project performance. So all it's saying to you is if you have a lot of RAM, you can go fast, which means it will obviously speed it up, just like saying that a better CPU can render faster than a slower ranged CPU. I'm going to choose on fast. I've got no issue using the high RAM. And then the polygon count. So this one, I keep it on default. I haven't seen a difference between any of these options. Set camera controls. Now, if you go to set camera controls, we've got this menu over here. The default click, so the movement, which is relative movement, go just a step forward or wherever you click. I have experimented with these. I have experimented with all of these options. Honestly speaking, the actual default is very smooth and easy to use. I wouldn't change anything here, but feel free to experiment with these. And then finally we have export web. Now what this is going to do, it is going to create all the files that we need to actually update for our FTP site. So this is where file organization is important. Underneath draft renders, As you can see, these are all the renders that it created for us. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go export web. I'm now going to create a new folder. Now, this is entirely up to you. What I do is I call this FileZilla because I'm going to use the FTP program called FileZilla to upload it. And the reason that I call this FileZilla is to tell me these are the files that go into, obviously, FileZilla. Completely your choice what you want to label it. This is my preference. It helps me understand what I'm doing. So double click that. I'm going to click on select folder, and once it's done that, it's going to say exporting Layama project 2%. It's not going to take too long. Once this is done, I'm going to fast forward it for you, and then we can dive into the next settings. Okay, once that's done, it says exported flawlessly. We can simply close this if we want, or we have the option of check exported web using the built-in browser, which is really awesome. What this is saying is that it's got a mini browser where we can literally just click this button and view our finished product to see if we're happy with it, instead of basically taking everything, popping it into the FTP site, uploading it, checking with the web browser, and then viewing it. So this is just for preview purposes only. Obviously this you cannot send to a client. This is just for you to see if it works and if you're happy with it, and then of course you can upload it to the FTP site. So let's click this button and have a look. Now we can turn around, we can have a look, and this is the watermark that I was talking about earlier. You can see it says point and move, rotate, it's got change view, and then the small movements here. So those are obviously just for you to view, to see how you can move around. So let's click and have a look at how everything looks and feels, making sure that all of our cameras actually do work and we're happy with it, checking every camera, making sure it's all good. And if you are happy with it, there's no errors, then of course you can go and do the high-res version. So have a look there. I literally went over the couch, and that's fine. Remember what I mentioned, if the two cameras can see each other, then obviously you can navigate to that point. So as we go, we click, making sure that you go through every single camera. You don't want there to be an issue or an error on one camera and then you don't notice it. So this is me just going obviously up the stairs, making sure everything works perfectly, and if you're happy with it, you can go into the high-res render. Okay, so this is the web preview, which is really awesome. We can now close that. So what do we do from this point? Now that we've got our draft, we can obviously go into the high-res version of this. And that is where it's going to be the final version. And of course, to do that, what we would do over here is we would then choose the quality that we want. For example, medium quality is good. We'd go into the F10 menu and then making sure that the noise is obviously quite low, so 3%. And then remember, you have to save the files. We'd obviously save this in a different file. So we have obviously got the high-res version. And then I suggest you either use a render farm or just render overnight or over the weekend, depending on your PC. It could take quite a while to render that out. So that is the basic understanding of Layama. That is the basic walkthrough that you can actually do. Now, the advanced features is obviously the manual scene definition, advanced, hotspot configuration, and alternate scene sets. And that's what we are going to tackle now. I want to teach you how to do all of these settings and the ability to change alternate sets. Alternate set is the following. You can see the tab button over there. If I click that, it's going to change into a different set. Now just remember, it is an entire brand new set of renders. So for example, I had to render this entire scene out, then I changed it to the nighttime version, had to render it all over again, and then of course every set that you want or different version, you have to render it out completely. So we're going to start tackling that now. I would like to tackle hotspots first, so we're going to dive into hotspots configuration, and I'm going to teach you how to place them, what they can do for you, and how to edit them. Let's jump to hotspots configuration. So the first thing that we need to do is locate how to add a hotspot inside Mac so that Layama can actually know where it is, and that is done right over here underneath your helpers. And then if you scroll down, you'll see Layama right over there. And then we got LYM hotspots. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab and just place one right over here. So I'm going to click just like that. So if we look at the hotspot that we've created, we've got two parameters. We got the icon size, which obviously self-explanatory, and then we got the radius. Now the radius is very, very important because whatever is inside the radius in terms of cameras is what is going to be visible. So what I mean by that is the following. Let's jump to our example that I created for us to have a look, and you can see there's a hotspot right over there. Now looking at this hotspot, if I travel to this location over here, I cannot see that hotspot. And that's really important, because if your scene has multiple hotspots and you are unaware of how that radius works, every single camera is going to see every single hotspot, and that is just going to cause chaos everywhere. So you want to plan your hotspots to be visible to certain cameras. That just makes a lot more sense. So what we can do is, if we jump straight back into our scene, so let's unhide all. I'm going to delete that hotspot and we'll create a fresh one now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hide the ceiling again, as I usually do. If we go underneath our layers, it just helps to create another layer. So let's call this Layama Hotspots, and we'll start creating some hotspots. Now, you get to choose where the hotspot wants to be, so the client obviously can click on it for that exact object. So what we can do, for example, if I put a hotspot right over there, let's go to perspective mode. Obviously that is huge, so let's just scale that down to a good size. I'm going to rotate it so obviously the icon appears correctly, and let's move it up to a good height. So the exclamation mark is like this, and if we go to the top view, we see the giant radius. Now what this is telling us is that 1, 2, and 3, so these 3 cameras will be able to see this hotspot. This camera will not, and obviously anything outside of this radius will not be able to see it. So you can start choosing if you want it to be only these 2 cameras, excluding that one. Alternatively, of course, you can increase it and have all of these cameras and just rearrange it so that it fits nice and neatly like that. So the radius is really, really important. Again, I would not have every single hotspot available visibly to every single camera. It's just going to cause chaos. So what we can do is we can create more hotspots. So originally I did create one over here. Let's click the copy button. I'm going to rotate it just so it appears this way. Top view. Now I can reduce this radius or increase it. Let's actually have it for these 3 cameras. I am going to move this one. Let's actually move this one over here so it is only these 3, and shift click and drag over there again. Make another copy. Perspective mode. I'm just going to rotate this one like that. Top view again, and 1, 2, and 3. I want to make sure that that one definitely gets it, and then we can do that. So placing hotspots is really, really easy. If you want to put a hotspot for a object on the floor, whether you want to put one as a couch, as an object, that is completely up to you. I would not put the hotspot something like this directly above like that. It could cause issues when you're trying to click to a certain view. Just a little bit above, and try position it so that it looks nice and neat. Alright, so placing hotspots is super easy to do. It really, really is, and you can place as many as you want. That's not a problem. The next step to do is obviously to re-render this animation again, including the hotspots. Now, to do that, it's the same process. So what you do is you go to Layama, Exporter, you're going to choose all your cameras again. You are going to then create the actual animation. Exact same process. This time you will have hotspots. So I've opened up a previous project that I did with the hotspots inside, and once you've finished rendering, obviously you get this exact same menu again. Web title, description, logo, we've discussed all of this already, but this time we're going to concentrate on this one called Hotspots Configuration. So if I click that, it's going to have this new menu over here. Now, one thing that I do recommend is to label all of your hotspots, because it is going to help you in the long run to determine what you want that hotspot to be. So the lounge, I obviously placed it in the lounge. The icon is the icon that you can use. So you can do any icon that you want. I'm going to click on icon right over there, and I'm going to choose the icon that I created. And again, you can use any image that you want. It has to be 50 by 50, so you can see the size is quite small. Click in the open button, and then again, each one. So you can have different icons for all of your hotspots if you want. Next, we have data. Now this one is set to file because the mode is set to file. So what I can do here is I've got 4 different versions. I've got file, link, embed, link, same window, link, new window. I'm going to show you one of each and show you exactly how it works. So for example, the floor plan, what I intend for this one to do is when the client or someone clicks on a certain hotspot, what it's going to do is going to bring up a floor plan render. So I'm going to keep it on file right over there. I'm going to click on file, and then I'm going to choose the image that I want and simply click open. So you can see now that it's floorplan.jpg. The next one that I want to show you is link embed. Now, link embed is going to ask you for a URL. Now, this is really awesome because you can actually attach a YouTube video if you want to your actual project. So let me show you what I'm going to do. Now, naturally, you'd want to select this as the actual URL and then paste it in there, but that is not going to work. Because it's embed version, what you need to do is the following. You're going to click on share, and then you're going to click on the embed, and then you're going to click the code. The code is right there, starting with the HTTPS, and scroll all the way down up into that point there. What you're going to do is you're going to right click, say copy, then we're going to go back to the Layama, right over here, and you're going to paste that in. There is a little bit of a trick as well. Put in a question mark and then autoplay equals 1, and that will help it. So click the save button. The next one is the link in the same window. So what we can do here is we can literally just put in any URL that we want, and it is going to open it up in the exact same window. So URL, I'll paste my website, click the save button, and then the last one is link in a new window. Again, self-explanatory, click that and click save. The next option is show hotspots at startup or do not show them at startup. So you can choose to have them activated or deactivated, so you'll be able to see when you start the animation. You either see them or you don't see them. For me, if I'm going to do hotspots, I prefer to have them. Once that is done, we can close that. That is all that you need to do. I do recommend that you go to file and you save this project, because we've done quite a bit of work, you know, with the icons, the tabs, the links, all of that. And if you close this and don't save it, you're going to have to redo that. So you can click file and save this project. Next, what we do is we click the export web function. Once we click the export web function, the exact same thing is going to happen. It's going to go through the process, and then that built-in browser is going to appear. Now, there are some limitations with that built-in browser with hotspots, so I don't recommend that you use the browser to test that out. It doesn't work 100%. It's better to upload it to an FTP site, which I'll show you in a little bit. So let's jump to our example that we have. Here's a hotspot. If I click on this one, this is the file version. So whatever file JPEG that I chose, as I click on that hotspot, it will show that JPEG, which is really awesome. Next, we have this one over here. If I click on this one, this is the embedded version. So you can see that I'm still using my web browser. I haven't moved, but now I've actually got the embedded YouTube video that I attached to here. Let's go to the next one over here. If I click this button, you can see that I'm going away from the web browser and I'm using the same window, which means I've left. So I don't really recommend this one, because now to go back there, you have to go back, reloads again, and you start from the beginning. So I wouldn't really recommend that one. And then finally, the last one that we have is where we can choose to have everything in the same window. So let's go to our next hotspot, which I created over here. You can see that it opens up a brand new window, which I prefer, because then the user can obviously go into the next tab or the original tab. So you've got 4 different options to choose from, whether you want to file, link embed, link same window, or link new window. And that's it. Hotspots, very easy to work with, very easy to understand. All you need to do is just make sure that the radius is good, that it meets all of the cameras that you want to see it. So that's it for hotspots. Now we got alternate scene sets. So this is really, really awesome. This, again, just to show you the example that I've been using from the beginning, the one that I rendered out completely. This one over here, you can see this is the alternative scene, where you want to give your client more than one option in terms of finishes and also lighting. So now that I mentioned in terms of lighting and finishes, there are a couple of rules that we need to go to. For example, number 1, you cannot change the cameras. So don't add cameras, don't delete cameras, do not move the cameras. Very, very important. Number 2 is you can change the materials, the finishes of basically anything that you want, and you can change the lighting. You cannot change geometry. So don't think you can change over the different, let's say, dining room chairs or the kitchen counter or different versions of the kitchen. You cannot do that. So it's really important to know that. Once you have done all your changes, you have to render it out completely from scratch again. So remember that. Option 1, for example, is the original scene that I did. Option 2 is where I have the different version of the kitchen, and of course the couch I did change. And then option 3 is the nighttime. So I rendered out the entire walkthrough animation 3 times. So 9, 18, 27. So you're looking at 27 hours worth of rendering just to get all 3 of the scenes out. And once we've done all of the rendering, we then can attach everything together. So alternate scene sets. Now, what I would like to show you is how to attach each Layama file to the main Layama file. So this can be a little bit confusing, a little bit tricky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close all of this. I want to show you the filing structure that I've created. So I've got option 1, and I've made a folder with option 1. This is where all the renders go inside. I labeled option 1.lym. So I relabeled the Layama file, so I know this is the Layama file for option number 1. Inside this folder, I've created another folder. If you remember, I call it FileZilla. So if I wanted just this version to be on the web, I can do that. Then I've got option 2, the same thing. Option 2.lym, so I've relabeled this one, and then I've created my folder for the FileZilla. So if I only want this version to be online, I can do that as well. And then lastly, I've got the night, same concept. I relabeled the Layama file by night.lym, so notice the night version, and then of course I've got the FileZilla if I want this one on the web by itself. So I've got 3 Layama files that I can work with. Which one you start off with is going to be your very first option. So what I mean by that is the following. If I go into nighttime and I double click this Layama file right over there, we are now going to choose obviously the alternate scenes. Because I started off with night, this is the first one that is going to load in the actual scene. So this is how you choose the starting point, or the first version that you want to showcase your clients. In the examples that I created, I start with option 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click the LYM file, and then I've got the original menu that appears when it's finished. You're going to have to click alternate scene sets right over there. And what we're going to do is we are going to attach the other Layama files to this one. So I'm going to click on add 1, add 2, because I'm adding 2. First thing, let's relabel these so I know what I'm doing. This is option 2. I'm going to call this one night. So in my example, I want the original starting walkthrough to be option number 1. The first click of the button will be option 2. Then the third click will be the nighttime version. So remember, it has to go in order. So remember, you can choose the order that you want this to go in. Next, we have to simply just choose the Layama file. So option 2 will obviously be the option 2 Layama file right over there. Click open the nighttime version, and once we click on that nighttime, click open. We are awesome. We can see the status is valid, which is good. If this is an error, you're gonna have to double check your files, make sure everything is in order. Okay, now that we're back here, we can change the icons. Now we can change the icon for option 2. So I'm going to choose this icon over here. Again, you can make whatever icon you want. The nighttime version, I chose the black version of my logo. Click open. And then this one over here. This is one that a lot of people actually miss. So this icon button over here is the very first one that you will see. So let me explain. I'm going to restart the walkthrough, and this icon right over here, that one there, is from this button over here. So this button is this icon here. This button over there will obviously be this icon, and then this one over there is that icon. So make sure you change all 3 of the actual icons. Once that is done, it's as simple as closing this. You're going to export this into another folder, where of course you can call it final version, or whatever the case says. You can see I've got my final version over there, and this is where I exported everything out here, and then that is going to be your alternate scene, and that is the one that you obviously upload and send to your client. So alternate scenes, really awesome, really simple to use as well. And next we have the manual scene definition. Now this one says advanced, which technically it is, but it's something that you must definitely learn. It's really simple once I explain it to you, and you will see how amazing this is actually going to save. So the first thing that manual scene definition can do for you is if you have rendered out the scene. So let's move this aside. Let's go to the top view quickly. And I would like to, let's hide all of the hotspots. These are all of my cameras. Let's say you spent 12 hours rendering out this entire walkthrough, and then alternative scene, and another one, and another one. Let's say you've spent 30 hours rendering everything out, only for your client to tell you, hey, I'd like another camera somewhere, can you please add one? So now you would think you'd have to render everything out again, and you actually don't have to. So what I'm going to show you is a cool function. Select a camera, and if you want to add an extra camera, yeah, that's fine. The rule is more than one. So Layama doesn't work with one camera, minimum has to be two. So I've added these two cameras in, and you can add as many as you want, really, it's not an issue. So I've added these two cameras in. Just for my own sanity, I will actually come in here and call this new 001, because I'm not going to remember that's camera 28 and camera 29, of course, unless I write it down. But it's easier if I just call this new 1 and new 2. So now I've got these two cameras that are new to this animation. You do not have to render everything out again. That is ridiculous. What you have to do is just render these two guys out. So again, same process. Exporter. Let's delete all of these cameras. We are going to select only the two new cameras. New 1, new 2. Same settings. Make sure you've done all the same settings. And then you're going to render this out. Once this has been rendered out, what you then do is you're going to open up the original Layama file. So again, to show you my folding structure, it would be option 1. I'm going to come over here, option 1, I'm going to open that up, and now what I can do is I can come in here and say manual scene definition. So we got a huge menu over here. Let's break this down. The name of the cameras, obviously that's self-explanatory, it's telling all the cameras that are in there. We've got the position. Do not touch this, do not touch this, the look at, the beauty image, that's just the name of the image, and then the world normals and world position and the depth. Do not touch anything here. What you are going to do is you're going to add two cameras to this. But the way to do that is as follows. I am going to click on the File button. So let's go through File quickly. We've got File, Open Project. That obviously just opens up a Layama project. You can save the project. So remember, if you've made any changes to alternate scenes and hotspots, make sure you save your file. Otherwise, you're going to have to redo that if you open it up again. From this, you can export to web, which is the same as clicking this button right over there. And then we got Preview Web, which is awesome. If you want to just preview the file in the actual built-in browser, you can do that by clicking this button, and then Quit is Quit. The one that we are looking for is Merge LYM file. So we take in one Layama file, and we're actually merging the information that is in that one into our main one. So let's click this button. We're going to merge it. I've already rendered those two cameras out, and I'll call it a folder called New Cameras. Makes sense. Extra cameras.lym, I relabeled it for my own sanity. I click the open button. Now before I do that, I just want to show you one more thing. Have a look here. It's got all the camera names. So it starts with the first one, which is called Start, all the way to number 3. So number 3 happens to be the last one on the list. I'm now going to click on File, Merge, and I'm going to choose New Cameras. I'm going to click the open button. Now at first it doesn't say that it merged, nothing successful, which is fine. What we need to do is go and check manual scene definition again. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom and have a look what we have. We now have two new cameras, camera 1 and camera 2. These are the two that we just rendered out. Now Layama is smart enough to realize, hey, these are new cameras, it's the same scene, not an issue. What we then do is export. That's all that you do. You export it, and then guess what? Those two cameras have been joined to all the other cameras. It's a huge time saver to understand how to do it. It's not advanced, it's very, very easy to do that. The second thing that manual scene definition can do for you, again, is a huge time saver, is the following. Again, same scenario, you've spent 30 hours, you've rendered everything out, you're happy, it's beautiful, but then your client turns around and says, hey, listen, I don't like that one chair in your scene. Remember, changing geometry is difficult. You cannot make an alternative scene. So you're going to have to re-render certain cameras out. Not all the cameras, which is really, really awesome. So this one is a little bit technical, but I'm going to explain it, how to do it nice and neat. What is important is to identify which cameras actually see the change. So let's go through this slowly. In the event, for example, your client says to you, well, you know what, I actually hate this chair right over here. They want to change just this chair through the whole animation. It's not a problem. This is what I do. I'm going to go to the top view, and I'm going to select this camera right over here. I'm going to come into my perspective and I press C for camera. What you have to do is you have to identify which camera actually sees this chair. So obviously this camera sees that, so you're going to have to make a note, number 18. This camera, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate it, and then do I see it? Yes, I do. Does this camera see it? I doubt it. I'm going to rotate to point in that direction, come to my perspective, press C. It does not. This one surely does. Let's rotate that guy, press C. It does. This one will see it as well, so let's rotate. Yes, it does. This one should see it as well. Let's rotate. So all I'm doing is I'm just clicking the camera, I'm rotating it to see if that camera visibly sees it. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So these cameras we actually have to re-render now. All the other cameras are fine. They're perfect because they don't see that chair. So remember, if you need to change something in a geometry way inside your scene, identify the cameras that see that object. You're going to render just those cameras. So what you obviously do is change the model, whatever it may be, whether you delete it or change it, that's not a problem. Then the same process is actually going to happen. We're going to go into the exporter, and then you're going to add all your cameras here. So remember, we're going to have to re-render all these cameras out. Then you're going to click on go, render it out, do everything that you need to do. You don't have to export it to the web because it's just these cameras. So now you're going to have another Layama file, which hopefully you've labeled new cameras or additional cameras or changes, as long as you know what files are what. What we now do is the following. We need to open up the original Layama file, just like that. What we need to do first is go into manual scene definition, have a look at all the cameras that we have. We now need to delete the cameras that we re-rendered. So 11, 13, 15, 11, remove, 13, remove, 15, remove, 1, the new 001, remove, new 002, remove. That's fine. Now what we're going to do is we're going to click File. We're going to merge the file in its place, selecting the new one, chair change. That's what I labeled it. Go back to scene, scroll down, and now we got all those cameras back in there. So we deleted the old cameras and we merged in the new cameras. And then of course what we do is export it once again. So you can see that there's a lot of files that we're generating, a lot of folders we're generating. It's really important that you have a good filing structure. Make sure you know what you are rendering out and what Layama file belongs to what. So when you are merging things in together, then you know exactly how to do it. Okay, so that is everything that Layama has to offer. The very last thing that we need to do is actually upload it to the FTP site. And that's actually really simple. So what you need to do obviously is download FileZilla. I'll leave the link in the description. It is for free. Download, install it, and you're going to need a little bit of information with regards to your hosting site. So you'll need the hosting address, your username and your password, and possibly a port, and then you're going to connect to your FTP site. So if you're unfamiliar with it, definitely contact your web hosting, whoever is hosting it. They'll have all the information for you. And once you've connected to that, you are technically logging into the back end of your actual website. And what you're going to do is you're just going to come to the root folder and you're going to right click and say create directory. So let's call this one this course, whatever you want. Obviously click in the OK button. You'll see that we have a brand new folder. Click on the folder and now this is completely empty. So what we need to do is remember the folder that we created and we called it FileZilla. This is why it helps me understand what goes where. I'm going to grab all those files and I'm literally just going to dump it in right over here. So let's go to that folder quickly. And it's all these files over here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything right there. I'm simply going to click and drag and paste it right over here. So click, drag, let go. It's going to start uploading all of the files to this FTP site. And then the final step is to know the URL of the actual path that you've created. Now that is all dependent on where you created the folder and where you put all the files in. So just make sure you know the URL path. And then the last thing to do is making sure that you add in the last bit, which is index.html. So in my case, it is the following: www.viscourse.com/walkthrough, because the this giant root folder is called walkthrough, and then there is the folder viscourse which I created, and then \index.html. So what it's doing is it's going to look into this giant folder here, and it's going to access the index.html file, which of course is that guy over there. And so there we have it, your full walkthrough and guide on how to use Layama from A to Z, covering every single topic. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave a comment below if there's anything maybe that didn't make sense, or you may be encountering an issue. I'll be more than happy to help. I will catch you in the next tutorial.